Hello, everyone. First, I should thank Professor James Barber, who makes me available here as a freshman in this field. I'm very grateful for this opportunity to present a talk, which is actually part of my PhD work in the past 3 years. I'm so honored to see all of you, especially the distinguished scientists from all over the world. I appreciate your valuable suggestions or criticisms. Thank you very much. My talk today mainly focuses on DFT investigations on the reaction mechanisms in photosynthetic oxygen evolution, which is divided into ammonia binding to oxygen involving complex in the S2 state and the mechanisms of O bond formation in the S4 state. Ammonia and water are isoelectronic species and structure analogs with similar electronic characteristics, nucleophilicity, and accessibility to the OEC. Ammonia can bind to manganese only upon S2 state formation, but to be cast off in the following S3 to S1 transition. It doesn't inhibit oxygen production activity, and the exchange rates are almost immune to ammonia involvement. Just to say, the position occupied by ammonia definitely doesn't originate from substrate waters. So studies on ammonia binding to manganese have important implications on the identification of substrate waters and oxygen creation style. However, controversy still exists as to, with regard to the mode of interaction between ammonia and OEC in the S2 state. So far, there have been 3 kinds of proposals according to different kinds of experimental techniques. For oxygen 5 substitution scheme, ammonia would become amido, imidol, or nitridol in place of oxygen 5, which was initially inferred from ESEM, EXEFS, FTIR, thermoluminescence, and flash-induced oxygen measurement. However, this view has been questioned in recent years, and the W1 substitution mechanism has been proposed, which is supported by EPR, TRMIMS, Q-band hydrogen 1 ENDOR, nitrogen 14 nuclear quadruple coupling tensors, and the recent compelling D1 ASP61 mutation experiment. Afterwards, manganese 4 addition scheme appears by QMMM and EXEFS simulations. It says ammonia doesn't replace neither, but binds as an additional terminal ligand to manganese 4 of the G-tensor 4 structure, and this triggers the redox switch mechanism to ammonia altered G-tensor 2 multiply signal. So how does ammonia bind to the OEC in the S2 state? And which scheme accounts for ammonia altered G-tensor 2 multiply signal? In response to these debating models, I use DFT to check their reliability from view of reaction mechanisms. As the isomerization in S2 diversifies the avenues of interaction, I take both S2A and S2B as S2A and S2B as starting points. All the spin states are considered, and all the ultimate products must be open Cuban forms with formal oxidation states 3, 4, 4, 4, in line with the experimentally observed ammonia-altered G-tensor 2 multiply signal. for oxygen-5 substitution mechanism with closed cuban as a reactant, three routes have been studied. The first, ammonia enters the interior of the cluster through entering oxygen-5 out, followed by proton-coupled electron transfer from amide to hydroxide for valence rearrangement. The second, manganese 4 bond ammonia deprotonates to oxygen-5, followed by manganese 3 ligand exchange. The third, free ammonia deprotonates to oxygen-5 through PCET to break manganese 3 and oxygen-5 bond before binding to manganese 4. However, the free energy profiles turn out that the three key steps are quite unfavorable. For oxygen-5 substitution mechanism with open cuban as a reactant, the situation shares some commonalities, such as ammonia binding, manganese 3 ligand exchange, proton transfer, amide flipping, and PCET processes. But it needs additional amide or nitrogen transfer from manganese 1 to manganese 4 for cluster transformation. Although nitrogen branch transfer has medium barriers, the key steps to destroy oxygen-5 branch are too expensive to occur. So it's safe to exclude oxygen-5 substitution mechanism from a computational view. For W1 substitution mechanism, ammonia can easily replace W1 from both oxygen-4 and W2 sides on both open and closed cuban structures. Additional oxygen-5 transfer is required for the closed cuban structures. Given oxygen-4 channel as the axis of substrate analogs, I prefer W1 replacement by ammonia from oxygen-4 side. It can be seen that W1 substitution shows much energetic advantage over oxygen-5 substitution, which serves as the theoretical support for the recent APR findings. So for manganese 4 addition scheme, the redox switch seems to be invalid according to my model because of the unchanged spin populations throughout the reaction. Thus, no redox even happens upon ammonia carousel binding and W2 deprotonation to oxygen-5. In fact, I noticed the formal oxidation states of 3,4,4,4 can never exist in a closed cuban structure. The only effective ways towards ammonia altered G-tensor 2 multi-line signal should involve closed to open cuban conversion and then PCET for valence rearrangement. However, the scheme is also excluded because the necessary step of manganese 3 ligand exchange is rather difficult. So, since W1 substitution mechanism is strongly favored, W1 is excluded from the candidates as substrate waters. This immediately rules out possibilities of W1, W2, and W1, W4 coupling for oxygen evolution, which are marked in the dashed lines. Since oxygen-5 is impossible, the radical coupling mechanism involving oxygen-5 seems to remains an important option, but not to meet denial of the nucleophilic attack mechanism on this basis. So this calls for the next section, a complete mechanistic investigation on OO bond formation. It has been recently reported that all manganese are informal oxidation 4 and 6 coordinated in the S3 state, which makes a good sense to study OO bond formation in the coming S4 state. Well, which mechanism dominates OO bond formation in the S4 state? Both open and closed Cuban structures, different protonation states of ligands, and all the coupling ways and possible spin states are all taken into account. I believe this could stand for all the scenarios of OO bond formation, and there are over 500 potential energy surfaces surveyed. All the barriers and the driving forces are shown for the relatively stable reactants and products among all the spin states. I'm not able to describe the reaction details on all the reaction mechanisms, but should state that my statistics show the open Cuban oxo-axial coupling mechanism has the best thermodynamic superiority over the others. The dashed lines denote that although hydroxyl is a better nucleophile than water, the cases of calcium bound hydroxyl as reactants are forbidden because deprotonation of W3 is rather difficult. For the open Cuban oxo-axial coupling mechanism, 3-step electron transfer occurs after formation of the manganese 1 bond oxyl radical. The radical transfers its unpaired electron to manganese 4 to induce oxo-axial coupling to form peroxide. The peroxide transfers an electron to manganese 1 to create a superoxide intermediate. The superoxide transfers its unpaired electron to manganese 3 to release oxygen, and this generates the formal oxidation states 3, 4, 3, 3 for the most reduced S0 state. Here, 3 rules must be applied to screen out the effective spin states. The first one, manganese 1 and oxyl should be antiferromagnetically coupled to stabilize reactants. The second, the manganese 4 and oxyl should be ferromagnetically coupled to stabilize peroxide. The third, manganese 1 and manganese 3 should be ferromagnetically coupled to release triplet oxygen rather than singlet oxygen, which is in much higher energy. The first and the second together make up the requirement of Professor Sigman's spin alignment rule, while the third is I think is a necessary complement. All these lead to effective spin states doublet beta alpha beta alpha alpha and sextet alpha 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 beta beta for OO bond formation. Given the ground state substat alpha 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 beta and doublet beta alpha for S1, a preceding or subsequent spin crossing should be required. On the contrary, however, an awkward electronic situation exists in the closed Cuban structure, the closed Cuban oxo-axial coupling mechanism. A prerequisite for low barrier reactivity is the radical character of manganese 4 bond oxyl, but it can only be ferromagnetically coupled to manganese 4. And this causes severe instability of the reactants. Alternatively, antiferromagnetically coupled manganese 4 and oxyl, while although much lower in energy, loses its radical character due to a local electron transfer from oxyl to manganese 4. And this would increase the reaction barrier dramatically. Similarly, the situation is also found in the nucleophilic attack mechanism of calcium bond water W3 to manganese 4 bond oxyl W2, and this is I think this is a key negative factor to be disfavored. Recently, significant findings from the Japanese X-ray free electron laser group support the open Cuban oxyl-oxyl coupling mechanism. Superficial structure changes upon two flash illumination for S1 to S3 transition include manganese 1 bond manganese 1 bond oxygen 6 appears adjacent to oxygen 5 in the S3 state, suggesting the two oxygen may couple in the following S4 state. The second, W665 disappears from its original position, and the W567 moves towards oxygen 4. The third, short hydrogen bond forms between oxygen 4 and W567, which is presumably hydroxide. Here, I present my preferred S-state cycle, which can make a good explanation. The first come up with the interconversion in S2 from open to closed Cuban structures. After manganese 4 oxidation and W1 deprotonation during the S2 to S3 transition, W1 and W2 rotate along manganese 4. Then W567 binds to manganese 4 and occupies the original position of W1. At the same time, W665 is pulled to oxygen 4 and occupies the original position of W567 site. Manganese 4 oxidation decreases the pK of oxygen 4, and which induces W665 to deprotonate to its nearby group CP43 ARG357 to enhance its hydrogen bond interaction with W567 and oxygen 4. Next, W2 and oxygen 5 exchange in the S3 state. Exchange on manganese 3 in the S3 state, and an open Cuban structure regenerates in the S3 state. That's ready for open Cuban oxyl coupling in S4. The result is that W2 and oxygen 5 in S2 become oxygen 5 and oxygen 6 in S3. W567 and W665 in S2 become become W1 and W567 in S3 respectively. So this could be responsible for the observed oxygen 6 insertion, W665 displacement, and W567 movement to oxygen 4. Thus, it can be seen that the structure flexibility and the polymorphism of OEC in the S-state cycle is essential to water oxidation and oxygen evolution. For another, W2 and oxygen 5 as both substrates can satisfy the TRMIMS findings on water exchange, which indicate the fast and slow exchanging waters should have similar chemical environment in between S2 and S3 states. So above are extracted from my work. This is the references. I would like to share some of my reflections and open questions. The first, when exactly and how does ammonia leave the manganese site? Is there any experimental clues so far? I once suggested ammonia may be hydrolyzed in post-S4 state just prior to oxygen release, but my theoretical model is subject to some key hypotheses in the cycle, such as a pivot function of manganese 4, manganese 3 ligand exchange in S3, and the radical coupling mechanism in S4. The second, for W3, W2 nucleophilic attack mechanism, theoretically, how to release oxygen from manganese 4 bond protonated peroxide. Assuming a nucleophilic attack mechanism takes place, I think PCET would be necessary to reduce manganese and deprotonate the protonated peroxide, which is bond to manganese 4. But it's uncertain as to which group should be involved as a medium, and the reaction details seem to be vacant in this respect at present. The third, what's the water binding mode during the S4 to S0 transition? As we know, three binding modes have been proposed for S2 to S3 transition. There are water close to manganese 1, binding to manganese 1, calcium bond W3 moving toward and binding to manganese 4, and a free water calcium binding to manganese 4. But for as for manganese S4 to S0 transition, it seems less concerned and inconclusive because it even depends on a cluster structure after oxygen release. The fourth, why does the oxo-axial coupling mechanism hardly exist in a synthesized model? This question also relates to the rarity of the 4-valence manganese bond oxyl radical in artificial chemistry, and up to according to my knowledge, and 5-valence manganese bond oxyl absolutely dominates. It makes me randomly send another question. Can we synthesize a model that is completely identical to the OEC, at least for the 10 atoms in the middle? The fifth, last question, is there any experimental access to capture the O bond formation step in the S4 state? I don't mean to retain the S4 state as it's quite unstable, but could we grasp the information for the single step by some spectroscopic method without being coupled with other processes in the S3 to S1 transition, such as what oxygen release or proton transfer or the water binding processes, etc. I'm not sure. So in the end, I want to make some to show my thanks to first to Professor James Barber. I really look forward to be partnership with him, and thanks him. Thank Professor Zhao Yang for my employment in NTU. Thank you. Thank all the members of the organizing committee and the Nanyang Technological University. Thank my professor, former professor of in Leoninoma University. So thank you for your attention. Thank you.
Questions?
So if I understood it correctly, your calculations support fully the mechanism of Peer-Siegbahn, isn't it? Or,
Yes.
Yeah, right. And when you considered the option of nucleophilic attack mechanism, and you said it's not feasible in your calculations.
Yes.
But in your summary, you said it might be feasible if it's coupled to some proton transfer. Is that what you said in your summary or in your questions?
Proton transfer?
I think in your summary, you had this point that the nucleophilic attack mechanism might perhaps be feasible if you had a proton acceptor involved.
That's my
right?
imagination.
So yeah, but you have not investigated that in detail.
In my calculations, all the nucleophilic attack mechanism with different proton acceptor ligands, they have very high barriers.
Yeah, understand. You have tried different proton acceptor, or have you tried, for example, a carboxylate accepting a proton or so? Or?
I have tried all the cases I have thought, but the cases are not very satisfied because of high energy.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, let's thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you.